So, Paul, I am a pretty good judge of character, and I know that because I judge myself to be a pretty good judge of character.
Nailed it.
I bet I can guess your favorite holiday.
Yeah, all right, try me.
It is clearly Christmas. Yeah, so my joke being that you're Jewish. This is our Halloween episode, everybody!
Well, I hope everyone listening enjoyed that special Halloween edition of our intro theme that we put in, maybe.
No,
Probably.
It's not. I totally just put in like the intro theme for Shadows of Darkness or something.
I spent no time making that all night, mate.
If I had a favorite holiday, Halloween would probably be up there. To me, holidays are just days which are loose premises to not show up to work and get drunk, and I do not need a loose premise for that. So, but what am I even talking about anymore? Let's talk about horror games.
Well, all right, bloody horror games.
All right.
Because of the time of year. Oh, I get it. I see what you're doing here.
I'm putting you on the spot here. What is a horror game?
Well, it's funny that you bloody asked me that question, mate. A horror game is a game that is scary. No, let me try and answer this seriously. So a horror game is a game with scary elements, whether that's the atmosphere or just the plot itself. Doesn't have to have jump scares. It could be on the psychological level. So for me, it's not like hack and slash, is mandatory for horror.
You know, it's kind of weird because I was sort of thinking about this the other day, but when it more so as it pertained to movies, because I'm sort of like, what really defines a horror? Like, is it just because it has a monster? Does that make it a horror? Does it because it's trying to be scary, even if it's not? Or if something has like, Wizard of Oz had flying monkeys and those are pretty scary. Does that make Wizard of Oz a horror movie? Therefore, is King's Quest IV a horror game? Which it kind of is, because King's Quest IV is kind of scary at times. And it was just sort of weird, because it's sort of like, I think it would probably be a little bit easier to define a horror game rather than a horror movie, but it's still a little bit like, I forget where I heard this term. This is not credit to me. I heard this and it was basically, and it wasn't to do with horror, but somebody used the phrase, it's like porn. You'll know it when you see it. And I thought that was probably kind of the best way to describe pretty much everything in life.
Yeah, everything is a lot like porn.
I wish my life was a little bit more like that, but it totally isn't, and now I'm sad. Horror games. So
I, on the other hand, have very itchy genitals.
That was pretty terrifying.
Yeah, some bloody horror for you. Hopefully throwing a lightning strike bat sound effect behind that. Ooh.
No. Okay. So
a hard pass. Fair enough.
So yeah, I wanted this episode to be about like horror in games and like how different techniques that games use. It'd take way too long if we were to try to compare and contrast horror techniques in video games compared to and contrasted to horror in movies and other media. Books are going to be very different from movies, are going to be very different from, is there horror music? I don't know. I've never been scared by a song. So I think the best way to go about it is just like, what are some good examples of horror used in games? Like what was a game that stands out to you as being scary, and why? What made it scary to you, other than you just being a pansy?
Yes, that's also applicable. A very, very delicate little flower inside when it comes to horror things and spicy food. I can be a bit of a bitch. So I have kind of a lot of examples. So I'm gonna go with a not so obvious example, perhaps to.
Those are the best. Those are the best examples. Let's go totally not obvious. All my picks are totally obvious. Let's go with yours to dig me out of this hole.
I heard we were doing an episode on horror games, so here's a game that definitely does not classify as horror. That's what I'm trying to say. But I'm doing it to teach you lot a lesson of how horror can come from anywhere, even bloody inside. So, talk to people or call a hotline. This got weird PSA there. Anyway, my pick is Laura Bow. I'm not gonna say one or two. I'm just gonna say Laura Bow series because, obviously none of them are horror. Kind of more mystery, a little bit of suspense. But there's aspects in both of those games that scare the shit out of me, and I think I even favor those type of scares in these type of environments more because I'm not expecting it, but at the same time, I am at least mildly creeped out as I'm playing the game.
I have to agree with you on that. Sorry to cut you off. I just want to say that I do have to agree with that because I think that they are probably properly classified as suspense and thriller and not necessarily horror, but they are scarier than some of the horror games that I've played. Or at least, I'm not sure so much now, but under the specific circumstances in which I played it back in the day, which I'll get into a little bit, I'll let you finish first. But no, I've had some pretty scary moments out of Colonel's Bequest and Dagger of Amun-Ra.
Right, no, I'm glad you backed me up too, because I wasn't sure if this would be almost laughable. But yeah, to touch on what you just said, there's certain games that are called horror, and maybe it's like a horde of zombies coming at you, and by design, like let's say the sketch, the drawing, whatever of the zombie is probably scary, but that doesn't mean it's scary in the game. Just because there's like 100 zombies that you're having to shoot, guns at, doesn't mean it's a scary game. Like it should be scary, but there's no psychological, payoff or reward. It's just a bombardment of evil and bad stuff or whatever. So yeah, I think, obviously it can work in that environment, but it works even better when it's not advertised as such and when it's done in a believable kind of manner. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say. I say believable really lightly. But yeah, anyway, I like horror is at its best for me in video games when it leans really heavy on the atmosphere. Atmosphere is all part of our immersion as players, and I think it's an opportunity for a video game to outshine a movie, especially in the scary horror category, because video games, you have that immersion that you just can't have in a movie. So when a game takes advantage of that by creating an atmosphere that makes you a little on edge, a little touchy, a little sensitive or whatever, as both our Bow games do, and then they take advantage of it in just the right way, it's awesome.
There's a moment in the Colonel's Bequest which unfortunately is not nearly as scary when I play it now, but at the time that I played it, it actually I think I either did or came very close to actually like saving the game, turning off the computer and walking away because he was just sort of creeped me out to that degree where he was this is back when I played on I forget the exact specs, but it was like before even the 286. It was like a really slow computer. It didn't even have a hard drive. So it was really slow, and it was amber monochrome. So number one, it's like not even black and white. It's kind of like that dull orange color. So it's almost in my head, it kind of played out as sort of like a sepia kind of tone, even though it wasn't, but
Yeah. It aged that way.
Yeah. But, and number one, that just made everything so much creepier than it was. When I play it now in full color, it's like, these are great graphics, and there's a little bit creepy, but it's nowhere near as creepy as playing it in amber monochrome. I did play it once on green monochrome. It's really not the effect that they're going for. But, but there's this one part, and of course it's slow, so it's like, it takes like a good 30 seconds or something for my character to walk from one screen to the other. So it kind of really, gets your guard down sometimes, gets my guard down sometimes. And there's one time where I was sort of like, walking slowly across the room and, searching all these things that's, looking at the items here and there. And then in the background is like towards the back of the house, and you see like the windows along the back. And very slowly you see the silhouette of somebody walking behind the windows, and you can't see who it is. And I was just like so freaked out by this. I think I actually like turned off the computer and walked away for a bit.
You noped it. That's awesome. Yeah, and that's like, I think that's almost like the power of video games to be a bit corny, because it's like in those moments you feel like you might as well, you are Laura. Like, I am alone in a room with a killer outside. That is exactly how scared I am in real life.
Yeah.
In this moment.
Yeah. And I think like after that, you know, I lived in my, you know, I was still young. So I was living in my parents' house, lived in a detached house. And, you know, I think, you know, it's one of those things that sort of get you into that state of alert where just as soon as you hear something hit the window outside, or you hear like something moving around, it's like, oh dear God, killers, right?
Exactly. Worst case scenario. Yeah. No, that's the best kind of horror for me, because it's, you know, while jump scares can work, I have nothing against them when used correctly, whatever. That's the upside to psychological kind of scares like that one, because it can stay with you the rest of the evening.
Yeah.
You start to see things out your own window.
I actually did laugh there for a second too, because you mentioned like the whole zombie thing, and I actually did. You know, I have in my notes here that I really wanted to bring up Resident Evil 4 for a game that tries so hard to be scary, and a lot of people defend it as being scary. It's so not scary to me in any way that's lasting. Like, I just turn off the system and I forget about it. Everyone loves that one though, and everyone says it's like the best in the series. I'm like, no, everything that came before it was far better, just because it's a horror game and those are so much scarier than this one. I don't get why people like this one. It's like, number one, it's either just things going ooga booga fast at you for half the game, and then the other half is like a prolonged escort mission. It's like, this game sucks. Like, why do people like this? Seriously. Like, sure, it functions with mechanics and graphics, but it's like, this is like the worst kind of horror game that can claim to be a horror game. Like, I really don't get why people singled that out as being like the star of the series when there are clearly better games that came before it.
Right. Yeah, and that's a whole different style of game. It's like, you might as well be playing arcade. It's really no. It's not
basically
about story.
House of the Dead at that point.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that could be. It's a great kind of contrast to what we were trying to say with the Lara Bow thing, with more psychological horror, where it's like, you know, horror like Resident Evil 4, and frankly, a lot of the Resident Evils, I liked a lot of them, so I'm not shitting on the series, but they can easily fall victim to being. You get kind of like numb, you know. It's like there's only so many times a constant frantic jump scare, you know, something running fast at you. It's like after an hour and a half of playing that, it's you're just not affected on the same level anymore. And you nailed it with your wording. You said there's no lasting effect. Mm-hmm. That's exactly it. Like I'm not here to say what anybody should like in a horror game. Just what I like in a horror game is to have that lasting effect where, like, later that night, or maybe even for a few days, I'll kind of just chew over my experience, the whole plot of the game that I played, or whatever. That's a success for me. Like, that's definitely what I look for in a horror game, is to you know, just want to just sit and almost just think about it when it's done, as opposed to something with no lasting effect that's just supposed to be scary. And I don't know, it's like, you know, if you just loud noises and jump scares and flashing lights, like, if you just do that to people, it is scary, but it's really shallow.
Yeah.
It's a real shallow level of fear.
You know what's funny? I was actually just even thinking about this because you mentioned the Lara Bow games, and granted, they are Sierra games, so you die a lot, but I was just thinking about like a lot of moments that like kind of creep me out, and this is sort of like, you know, some of the creepiest moments are ones where I'm not even like going to die. Like, it's not even like death is on the line. Like, for as easy as it is to die in a Sierra game, a lot of the, like, that moment that really creeped me out in Colonel's Bequest, it's not like I was going to actually die. Like, it's not like if I didn't do something, my character was going to die or something like that was going to happen. It was just, there's something just about slow and methodical and just like planting something there and just kind of like, having that effect that's sort of like that, you know, the planting the seed that's just sort of like the anticipation of danger more so than the actual danger.
Yeah, no, you're right, because it gives you the feeling that the environment or the game or whatever is kind of playing with you, you know, by, you know, they're really letting it simmer for a while. You're really like stewing, because you're right, and that's a really good point too. It's impressive to be scared when your character's life isn't even on the line, and I felt that way about Lara Bow, but in a different example, mine was just walking into a room. You know, let's say, you know, you're in a room, go to the next room, you go right back to the other room, and there's a dead body there. There's something really chilling, especially for me in Amon Ra, when it comes to that specific example. Because in Amon Ra, there was just something really jarring and just unsettling where it's like, I was just in that room and I went in there again and all of a sudden there's this dead body and a really short, probably terrible little meaty sound effect that's supposed to be dark, but it somehow works. Like the whole thing just starts to, you feel like you're being watched through like surveillance cameras at that point as Laura Poe. It's really creepy.
I think a lot of like, when a game really implies stuff that happens that you aren't seeing, I think that kind of really sets a lot of, atmosphere that could be really used to great effect for horror.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go with that. Give me one of your favorite horror games for based on its atmosphere. Just games based on its atmosphere.
I guess it kind of leads into the same one anyways, because I just thought of a game which I can't talk too much about because I didn't play very long of it. I didn't play it very much for various reasons, because the PS2 didn't look good on a TV that I got shortly after I started playing this one. But for while I did play it, I don't think there is even the possibility of dying in the first hour. And sorry, I forgot to mention, it's a game called Rule of Rose, which is a little bit hard to find because it's really expensive and it's been banned and stuff like that. And I don't really remember the exact reasons why it's banned. I think some of it's sort of some very kind of creepy, subtle sexual content with children. There's sort of this undertone to it if you look at the trailer. Look at the trailer for Rule of Rose. I think just that alone is sort of we're not going to allow this game to be sold very much. But I mean, none of that stuff has really come across in the actual game that I've played so far. But like I said, I don't think I've even gotten past the prologue because there hasn't really been any sort of any immediate threat, but it's just so creepy. Dear God, it's creepy. It's just so, there's kids running around and kids are always creepy. I'm sorry.
Kids are bloody terrifying.
They're terrifying. Yeah. They're horrible. I extend this to real life too. They're
inherently scary. Look at The Shining. All they did was put them two girls in The Shining. That's it. They just bloody stand there.
That's all you need to do. And
they're iconically frightening.
Yeah. As soon as you do anything that involves kids and just make them talk slow or something or backwards, and then it's oh dear God, that's the scariest movie of all time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just these kids running around, and just you walk around and you open a door and go to the next room, and sometimes you open a door and there's a kid behind it who closed the door so you can't go through. And so God damn, what the yeah, that was creepy. I can't pick it apart too much to say what's scary about it, but holy God, it's creepy. This game, I don't know if anyone can find any affordable means of playing it anymore, but if you can, give it a try, just because I'm really trying really hard to find a way to play it, because my computer isn't good enough to run an emulator with any real performance to do it justice. I don't have a good TV to plug my PS2 into that will make it actually look in any way playable. But like I said, just what I played was just no threat of death, just kids running around, and they're just doing creepy stuff.
Speaking of scary children, I got to mention Sanitarium, which I love that game. I know you're familiar with it enough, anyway.
Mm-hmm. I haven't played it, but I mean, we can't. You might as well just give spoilers, because it's I think the statute of limitations is passed on that. So you can talk about it all you want. I'm just saying, I haven't played it. I can't follow the conversation, but feel free to just go nuts.
All right, awesome. Yeah, and there's really not even a big ending plot spoiler thing to even worth getting into, because it's definitely the experience, the journey. But for those who haven't played it, long story short, you've been in a car accident, you got brain damage, you're in an asylum, and the game, while it is a point-and-click adventure game, it plays in levels. There's 6 of them, let's just say, and each level, or you call it a story, whatever you want, it's your character's going through something in his own head, and this is how you visualize it. And so one of them is he's walking through this just gross, decrepit city with all these deformed children, badly deformed. They're really creepy looking, but they've got pigtails and kitty stuff that just highlights the creepiness of their childlike existence. Mm-hmm. And it just has such a weird vibe where it's the city that's deserted minus a few children, and how they all just refer to like this one mother, like mother won't let us, mother, this. Ugh, I hate that.
God.
Yeah, it's
even just
terrifying.
hearing you say that was like, ugh.
And it's just terrifying, and there's actually another level in that game where you're playing as your baby sister, who passed away when you were younger, and you have guilt for her passing, even though it wasn't your fault, but you were a child. That's how you processed it. But anyway, so you end up playing as her, and you're at this like seaside traveling like carnival, like a fair carnival, is that what you call it, carnival thing?
Yeah, sure.
And but there's something creepy about that. There really isn't a lot of children in that level. Just the fact that you play a little girl and everything's just real dark. There's just a real dark vibe about it. And again, this game is probably classified as horror, but it's not a jump scare sort of situation. It's just like a psychological trip evaluation through like a broken mind or whatever.
That's the best, yeah.
Yeah, but I highly recommend that one, especially if you're easily terrified by children.
Well, I guess
you know it.
I am. I very, very clearly am. I've admitted many times throughout this episode. But yeah, so I mean, we've established that children are creepy. So I guess if we can really come away with anything from this episode so far, is it's sort of like, hey, if you want to be scary, kids. Just throw a bunch of kids at something, and until it's scary, and there you have a horror.
Yeah, exactly. Just throw more children in there.
I think you mentioned like jump scares a while back. You kind of generally don't like jump scares, I think you said, which is fine. That's I jump scares are a thing that I find people misuse, and therefore they've kind of become associated with a cheap and undesirable method of horror, which I think is also kind of not entirely correct, because I think it can be used really well too. And for instance, a game came out a while back called Five Nights at Freddy's. Did you know about this one?
A little bit, yes.
It was a viral sensation because, and as such, a lot of people don't like it because it just kind of got worn out. Like everyone with a YouTube channel, it was pretty much designed for these people with like shrill voices and overreactive mannerisms to like play this game on Twitch or YouTube or something and just start shrieking and screaming and flailing their arms around whenever anything literally happens. So I understand why people are kind of a little bit burnt out on this one. And I understand generally why people kind of don't like jump scares, because I kind of don't like them either, but they can be done right, and Five Nights at Freddy's does them really right. Like it's one of those things where if you're going to do a jump scare, the jump scare should be kind of not the scary part of it. It's just kind of like the logical conclusion to setting up a jump scare.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's if it's done right, a jump scare should be like the relief.
Yeah.
Where it's like, just get it over with, for God's sake. Like when you know it's coming and they just won't do it, like please just, I can't hang on anymore. So yeah, it's all that anticipation.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and that's exactly what it is. Five Nights at Freddy's, people have described it as a game about jump scares, and that's why they don't like it. So like, that's not entirely accurate. It's got a lot of jump scares. It's kind of revolved around the jump scares, but what it is, it's a game of scary anticipation, because the game is like building up to the jump scares. The jump scares are like, that's when you lose. So you're not supposed to want to do that. That's the punishment if you don't play it right. If you play it well, it's going to still be terrifying, because it's like basically the way the game works is that you're the night watchman at this kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese kind of place, right? Do you guys have Chuck E. Cheese?
Yeah, we do for some reason.
Yeah, so you're the night watchman. They don't even really tell you a whole heck of a lot. Just you work until sunrise. And you basically just like go around. It's
probably the job description too. I mean, there isn't a lot to say.
Yeah. And so you go around. You have the entire thing is told with surveillance cameras. So you just like check the surveillance all throughout. One of the things about the game is that you have only a limited amount of power, so you have to really ration out your power between using the surveillance cameras and closing the doors to your office, which are powered doors for some reason. But you go through...
So the game could happen.
Yeah. So you basically look through the surveillance cameras and like, here's some hallways, here's a storage room, here's the dining room or the party room or whatever. Here's the room where they keep all the animatronic mascots and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, nothing seems out of place. And you kind of cycle through over and over, and eventually you sort of like, let's say you'll bring up the screen with the animatronic mascot storage, and now one of them is missing. And then you're like, oh, that's weird. And you kind of look around, and you'll switch to another camera and find that it's in that area now. And then it's like, oh, these all look pretty terrifying, the mascots anyways. And then as you go through and as they keep moving, you'll see that they keep moving closer and closer towards your office. And that's the thing. Eventually you turn on the light outside your door and you'll see it out there. And that's when you got to like close the door to make sure it can't get in. Because if it's there too long, it'll get in and they'll jump out at you and give you, and it will be that sort of go from really quiet to really loud as it makes this like, as it makes a scream and jumps right in front of the camera / screen at you. And yeah, that's the jump scare, but it took you like 15 to 20 minutes to get to that point of you frantically guessing where they're going to be, where they're going to go next, and if you have enough power to keep them out, right?
Yeah, that's really unfair to chalk that up to a jump scare game, because that's literally when jump scares should be used, where it's like a taxing, exhausting ride getting to it. Like in other words, the reason jump scares could get a bad name, or like I'll say I don't like them when. It's not that I don't like them. I just don't like them 90% of the time because they're just like lazy tools.
Exactly.
And this game sounds the opposite of a lazy jump scare thing. It's like, in other words, it's the exact opposite. I don't like jump scares when it's just like, we have nothing better to do, so we'll just loud noise at you. Whereas this game, it's just giant build up to one jump scare. Like, that's when they should be used.
Yeah, exactly. And you see it coming. It's not like they're just sort of like, oh, you're walking down the street. Blah! It's just like, oh no, these things are coming after me, and I can't let them come after me, because if they do, they'll jump out at me and go, bah! And I don't want that to happen. And
I don't like that.
It happens, and it's just like, God damn it, why did I let that happen? So, it's different. I don't like when, there's examples where good games and good movies do resort to that now and then. It's sort of like, okay, well, I didn't like that part, but overall it's a good game or a good movie or whatever like that. But
yes, and I have to say real quick, sometimes a cheap jump scare is also highly acceptable. Like I like when it's so cheap that they knew it was cheap, and it's kind of like, oh, you fuckers, you really got me for no reason. I can respect that, in other words.
All right, fair enough.
I can't think of too many jump scare games myself, because most of mine are on the adventure scale. I guess I have one. It's called this is a classic style game, little asterisk mark. Want to try and avoid those hundreds of emails we will definitely get.
Because we always get hundreds of emails after every episode.
Yeah, exactly.
It's flooded. I'm just blowing up here, man.
The amount of physical letters is also just about ridiculous. It's 2019. But anyway, it's a classic style game in the sense that it's a pixel art point and click. That's kind of it. It's actually really not super in the classic style, because it's not like I guess what I'm trying to say is the only thing that makes it classic style is the fact that it's pixel art, because the mechanics, the way the game kind of moves, like it has a very different vibe than like a traditional adventure game. Like there's like a moving camera as opposed to still rooms and things like that. But did I say the title yet? God, I'm sorry if I didn't. This game is called The Long Reach. Like the
right,
bloody long explanation. Am I right? Sorry. Boo myself. So anyway, this game's really cool. I highly recommend it. Beautiful at pixel art, awesome atmosphere, really cool lighting. And so like what this game kind of does that's really cool, and there are very few but well-placed timed jump scares in this game. There's my transition. I will now speak nothing else of jump scares from here on out. The game plays on like this, you feel like a lack of control because you have like a distorted understanding of what's going on. So like it kind of plays on like our own need to have some sort of control over a situation, some sort of understanding of what's going on. Like, if you're playing a game, you want to bloody know what it's about, what you're supposed to be doing, what world it is. And this game, it doesn't not tell you, but everything's just kind of distorted to where as the game's quickly getting on its way, you're kind of telling it to slow down so you can piece more of the puzzle together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's a very disorienting kind of game because you can't really figure out what the hell's going on in time for as each thing keeps happening. And for this game, hallucinations are like the main villain, which I think is awesome. Like I loved, for example, which one was it? It was Batman Begins, where they had the Scarecrow using the hallucination gas or whatever.
Yes.
Like that to me, that's such a cool mechanic. Like I want to see more of that. Like that was one of the coolest scenes in a film, was in that Batman film, just with people like that. That's scary. Like to be straight up hallucinating on top of seeing horrible things all around you. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to get them. So this game I thought it was cool they used hallucinations, but what was even cooler was they played on that mechanic like really well, because like as the player, you know that hallucinations are a thing after a certain point, but like you still struggle to understand what is real. So it's like in the middle of hallucination, you might think that's just the normal plot of the game. And then in a normal plot, you might think it's hallucination. Like it gets hard to track. It almost feels like Fight Club, sort of thing, where it's like you can't figure out which is which. And I don't know, in Fight Club, the crisis was kind of internal, right? It was one guy, who had a separate personality, whatever. Whereas this game, it's not really clear. Like without spoiling the ending, even the ending's not clear in the sense that like it's kind of based on your perspective. Like what the hell was real? So I thought that was really cool, and I do like those kind of Blade Runner endings where it's up for debate for many years to come.
I know you've tried to get me to play this one for a while now, and I keep putting it off. But that actually does sound really quite interesting. I think you also kind of didn't really want to tell me too much about it. But fair enough. If I took this long without playing it, you can go ahead and talk about it. But now that you've told me, I am kind of like, oh, that sounds really cool. Maybe I'll actually play it. So sorry, I kind of made you have to do what you didn't want to do in order to get me to do it. So if that makes sense.
No, it does. And actually, after I ran through the head of my game before we recorded here, I was like, this, because the ending is kind of up to perspective in a sense. It's like there's really nothing to spoil. It's all up to you anyway.
Right. I should also take the time now because sort of kind of what you were describing there for a bit also sounded, I don't think they're exactly alike, but it kind of reminded me of Eternal Darkness, which I haven't played, in terms of like trying to blur the lines between what's real and what's not. I'm not going to give spoilers on that. You know what I'm talking about if you've played it. But the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I just want to say that, this what we're doing here is we're not going to be able to bring up every awesome horror game. So if we don't talk about a game that you really like, we're not saying it's not good or it's not a great example or it's not one of the best games ever, like Silent Hill 2 or Alien Isolation or something like that. These are the games we're talking about. There will be more Halloweens. We'll talk about those other games some other time. We kind of really we're just picking and choosing which ones we want to talk about. But, so yeah, there's great games out there. Just because we don't mention your favorite doesn't mean it's not good. Doesn't mean we haven't played it. Doesn't mean we are saying anything about it. But we don't have time to bring up every single really good horror game. In fact, my favorite horror game of all time is Alone in the Dark, and I'm not going to talk about that because we already spent an entire episode talking about that quite some time ago. So, just look that up if you want to know more about that one.
And if there's enough popular demand for us to list more, maybe we'll do like a Patreon where we just yell game titles at you. The Last Door, Sanitarium, Clock Tower. We'll just bang them all
Here
out.
are all the games. Oh man, if we could do like a kind of like a Pokemon rap, but like do it with like horror game titles.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess at this point, all this to say that at this point, I think there's only one game that I kind of want to talk about. I'm still not sure if I want to give spoilers about it right now, but I will say probably like the scariest game I can think of, like in terms of like actual like really emotionally affecting me, was funny enough Doki Doki Literature Club.
Yes.
That's
God, yeah,
just, yeah. And you, for those of you who haven't played it, you're not going to understand why. Just play it, and that's all I can really say at this time. It's god damn, you want a game that's just sort of not. I don't know if it's classified as horror, if you really can classify it as horror, but it's
to my definition, yes. But I know what you mean. It's
Yeah.
that was. That you will think about that game for a couple of days afterwards. That's just a fact.
It's a pink bubbly dating sim, guys. Go play it.
Why else would it be on a bloody horror episode?
Yeah. Dating scary.
Especially in this bloody political climate, am I right? I don't know. I feel like adults say that a lot, so I wanted to.
Yeah.
Bloody PC culture gone mad. No, that didn't fit there either. I've got a whole array of uncomfortable, awkward sentences to say that don't fit in timing.
But yeah, that's. I think that's probably that's probably about where I'm going to leave off. So the rest of the show is yours. But yeah, like I said, there's so much I want to say about Doki Doki Literature Club. But if you haven't played it, I can't tell you anything about it because it's just that I can't. I just can't.
If you want us to, you can go on Patreon and bloody
listen to the episode that we did.
Yeah, see what I just made us $1, mate.
All right, awesome. So throw us $1. You can hear everything. Man, this has turned into a cheap plug, like really fast. This is like the cheapest plug we've ever done. Pay $1 to Patreon, and we have an episode where we talked about Doki Doki Literature Club and why it's great and scary. So
I'm sorry about that too. I couldn't hold back my own internal Jew there. He just shot out and tried to make an American dollar, mate.
But only after you've played the game.
Yes, that's very key. All right, I've got two more to mention. One kind of for me, one for us. So the first one is Phantasmagoria, and I got to bring this up.
This is yours. I have known nothing about Phantasmagoria.
Yeah. This one just on me. I was under the opinion that this game was just a laughable hot mess until I sat down with.
Is it not?
Well, I sat down with the bloody man in the mirror and was like, this game actually right fucked you up as a kid. Like I was like a poster child at the time for like why parental advisories are sometimes correct. Because I was, and why having the cool parents can lend to nightmares or whatever. Because I had the cool parents, love you, dad, appreciate me being able to play it, but it fucked me up. There's a.
This is on you, Dad. You're the reason I'm me.
Oh god. So my perception of the game was it was just how you probably see it. Anybody looking back on this just campy, ridiculous, the whole full motion era basically. God love them, but they were obviously very cheesy a lot of times, and Phantasmagoria is bloody right there with them all. But as a child, there was one scene, so like the ghost of the bad guy, some shit, who cares? He kills all his wives, making them his ex. I see what he did there. He kills them all based on like their own passion. So the one girl, super into gardening, he gets her out in the greenhouse, and he takes a little handheld gardening shovel, probably has a name, maybe even a sexual one like its cousin the hoe. He takes that shovel and scoops it full of dirt and shoves it down his wife's throat, making her his ex-wife. And it was... And so, and her, I swear, I'm probably exaggerating my memory of this, but I feel like her lips like split open, like Joker style. It was just real rough, and I had lots of nightmares about it. As a matter of fact, my visual memory of it is probably based on the nightmares I had of it and not the actual scene in the game. But that game bloody fucked me up. But looking forward, I do laugh at it like everyone else does. And since we're on the topic of bloody FMV, what am I going to say? Night Trap. We got to talk about Night Trap before we close out.
Oh, God, yes. I mean, because I have not played it myself, except I know a little bit about it. And I know that you've played it. And so, yeah, we do need to talk about this.
It's, where do you start? It is like a...
Is it scary? Because the thing is, when it came out, I remember perfectly when it came out. I just never played it, but I remember perfectly when it came out. And it was so controversial. Ooh, it's scary. Ooh, it's sexual. Ooh, it's all these things that we cannot let think about the children and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then years later, I'm been an adult and I go back and watch it and number one, it's kind of laughably cheesy, and number two, everyone knows it's laughably cheesy. Like, there's no ever any recognition of it being anything other than just like laughably cheesy. Like, not even scary, not in any, I don't know, you tell me if it was sexy or not. The girls are, I don't know, watching as an adult, they never struck me as anything particularly fancy, but I don't know if as like a pubescent child, if it was any different.
Yeah, I think my beans were on the verge of dropping, but I don't think they had actually descended yet. I'm sorry for saying descended.
That is the worst sentence that has ever been spoken on this show.
That was way too medical. It was too on the nose.
Wow. Okay.
All right. Enough about my coming of age and
to Night Trap. Coming of age to Night Trap. So, I don't know, tell me, like, fill me in. What was it like? Like, was it scary? Was it sexy at all? Like, was there, I don't know, there's a lip sync slumber party or something? And,
I think if you're into shoulder pads and Aquanet pink, it's going to be well sexy. It's going to be.
I'm not against it.
If you ever like turned the lights down, lit some candles for yourself, and had to go at like a Poison or Bon Jovi video, it's probably sexy. And I got to say, I was young. I remember I watched my dad and older brother play it. It was like a big deal when we bought it. It was totally like
totally was.
Like we all sat around the console and watched somebody play it for like 3 days, whatever, till it was done. Maybe one day. I don't know. What is time?
It was a big enough deal that they re-released it recently.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. I think it's actually in my Steam library. With another 100 fossils of games I'll probably never get to. But when it came out, I was pretty impressionable. I was probably the most likely to get scared of this game. And I don't think I did. Like, I don't. I think, like you said, I think it was just. I think even at the time, it was like it was the a B horror movie of its time. Like, you knew it was making fun of a like, it was almost like a parody. I hope it was a parody, because if they really tried their hardest, and I'm straight faced, like, this game is a parody of the genre. If they're like, no, it really wasn't, that would be a shame. Lost in translation, yeah, because I didn't think it was scary at all. I thought it was, right. I think it was always ridiculous, right? Somebody write in and bloody tell us otherwise, but it was like, if you were to take like 1992 or whatever, like that weird, it's not the 80s, it's not the 90s era, like, and make a time capsule, like, all you would need is this game. You wouldn't need anything else. Like, just put this game in the time capsule. It'll give you the fashion, like, just the overall just cheesiness of the whole era. Yeah, so bloody 90s.
I just love that, like, they, like I said, there was that lip sync slumber party scene that's infamous now. And I just love that, like, they're singing the song that, like, is the name of the game. Like, the song's called Night Trap, I believe. Like, it's part of the chorus. It's like they're singing the song of the game in the game. It's awesome. I love that. It's one of the greatest video game songs of all time.
That's awesome. That is so the era too. It is just so. Yeah, it's so early 90s that one of the actresses was probably definitely dating Bob Saget.
Oh,
just that peak peak Saget era. He was in bloody everything.
And what can be scarier than Bob Saget?
Getting finger banged by Bob Saget.
Oh God.
In the back of his Volkswagen Scirocco.
That's
Yeah, now I made it so specific you kind of have to visualize it.
Oh.
And if you can't, then just Google a Scirocco real quick. You'll be there with me.
I God.
So anyway, how do we get on topic? What are we talking about, Dave Coulier?
Can we get off of this? This is really not...
This is not video game centric at the moment. Let's bring us back.
I'm done. I am done now. There's nothing further for me to say. And if there was, I don't want to say it anymore. This is it. I'm done. I'm calling it off. This has gotten from scary to outright disturbing.
If this was like a Twilight Zone episode, the camera would zoom out of us doing this podcast and it would show Bob Saget having a wank listening to us.
Just put this episode out of its misery.
Oh God! All right, well, buddy, you're better at the promotions. I always duff the Twitter thing.
Oh, okay, fine. You find us on Facebook, the Classic Gamers Guild. We have a page, we have a group. We're on Patreon. You can find us there again, the Classic Gamers Guild. We're on Twitter at the CG Guild. We have email at mail@classicgamersguild.com. Please send us your thoughts. Why don't you tell us what horror games you like or something like that?
Right, let us know which one of your family members was on a date with.
We're done. We're done.